Going to begin with respectful relationships with First Nations here in Canada, here in Quebec. Of course, it's clear our relationship with Indigenous communities needs to improve. But how do we do that? Let's go to Chief Ghislain Picard. He's Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, Quebec-Labrador. Chief Picard, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
So you recently wrote an op-ed, and in it you talk about systemic reconciliation. When I hear that term, you have my attention. We've been through so much. It seems like talking to the Quebec government about systemic racism is like talking to a brick wall. They're not budging on that. So I love this term because I think it seems like it's something that maybe they can get on board. But tell me more about and define systemic reconciliation.
I would say, maybe it's a way at looking at the glass half full rather than half empty. And to me, of course, it's clear to us that the onus is on the government to do its part because many of the chiefs that I speak to feel that they have been compromising for so long. And this is the time for change. And I think the question that often comes up is, do First Nations or Indigenous people have good faith in any kind of discussion or negotiation? And we feel that we've had that good faith all along. But it's difficult to sort of gauge the same kind of sentiment or feeling from the other side. Because governments tend to really set their own conditions for engagement. And that's where we really don't find that comfort zone that would, secure that kind of a process or commitment. So this is the message that we want to put forward. And the last 3 years with the provincial government is a good example because, on one hand, they're able to, challenge us in the courts. It's true for C-92, the federal law that would allow us to have our own laws and governance systems when it comes to the well-being of our children. And on the other hand, they can portray this kind of, positive image of what they're trying to achieve for Indigenous people. So that's where we have some difficulty. And what we're saying is, why don't we engage in a political process that is true and that reflects really the commitment from both sides? And that's really not what we have seen. And I think the last demonstration of that is the speech by the Premier earlier this week, where they're really picking, what they want to put out there, and at the same time covering where that relationship is not really, at our liking from our side.
With Chief Ghislain Picard, Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, Quebec-Labrador. Chief Picard, one of the things being proposed is a political table between the Assembly and the Quebec government. Tell us more about this political table and your hopes and aspirations for it.
Well, that goes back to about a year ago. And at the time, the reflection that we had is, okay, we can continue doing what we've been doing for years, which is react, be on the defensive, react to any kind of policy or decision made by government. And, from a negative standpoint. Or the other choice or the other option that we have is, why don't we propose a process where, we can find some a level playing field that comforts both sides, and this is what the political is really designed to provide. And it's been difficult for the past year, to set the terms of reference. Is there comfort from both sides, and the issues, health, of course, number one, social services. We spoke about public safety just this past month. And there again, we have a lot of distance to cover in order to tell government, well, if our instance, as an example, our own police officers are supposed to apply the same law as other policing services, why don't they have the same means and the same capacity? And to me, it's so evident. It's obvious that we're not really operating with equal forces. So that's another issue that really brings together all of our nations, because public safety is a right, a human right, and we should be able, as a community, as nations, to provide the same kind of services as any other, municipality in Quebec, for instance. So I think we have a long way to go before we can find, a ground that provides comfort for our peoples.
Chief Picard, near the top of this interview, you mentioned the glass half full. And when you look back on what's happened in Quebec over the last year, what sticks out of in your mind, if you want to be the optimist here, the glass half full kind of guy on this issue? What sticks out in the last year that gives you the optimism and the hope that we're moving in the right direction?
Well, we've been attempting to be proactive in the last few years, and that's exactly the kind of spirit we had when we introduced a plan to fight racism just about a year ago. And the response has been very positive from civil society, different groups, even individuals, wanting to know more and wanting to do more. And to me, it's not to free the governments from the responsibilities or the duties. It's really to remind them that, hey, this is your population voting for you. Why don't you lend an ear and listen to what they have to say? And it's the same kind of spirit that we're putting forward in terms of this big grand economic circle we're planning for the end of November in Montreal, where we're inviting and, in a way, challenging the private enterprise, the Quebec Inc., if you will, to be part of that process of reconciliation through an economic reconciliation. And I think that's another way of really moving forward with the society around us. And I think once you bring economic stability for our communities, economic certainty, then definitely I think these are means to sort of, bring down those walls and, set ourselves and our next generations for a more positive and prosperous future.
You mentioned legal challenges from the Quebec government, but I do want to ask you, and maybe you want to speak directly to François Legault and Yann Lafrenière and the CAQ government. Is there anything that you've seen on their end that surprises you in a good way, in the positive way, about where we can go in this relationship?
Well, I think the last action, and it's still very fresh, I think it came through the Minister of Justice, Simon Jolin Barrette, and introducing a bill to respond to one of the calls for action by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, whereby people who were forced to change their names will not have the possibility of taking their names back. It is significant from, I would say, from a perspective where people were challenged and forced to, adapt to another system, and now are provided the means to go back to, what they feel comfortable with. It might be a small thing, but it's very significant for the individuals affected. So to me, that sort of opens the door for, positive action, and that's what we expect for government. But definitely they need to do more. And what they need to do is not, speak from the, both sides of their mouth in the sense of doing, promising one thing and doing something else on the ground that is contrary to, the promise. That's where we are quite challenged.
My last question for you, and I saved this for last because I want you to, if you want to spend 5 seconds on it, fine with me. If you want to spend a minute, also fine with me. I just want to ask you about the land acknowledgement of the Montreal Canadiens, which has caused some back and forth here. We've heard some comments from Quebec government officials. Of course, some Francophone media have also made their statements on this. But do you have a take here on the Canadiens' land acknowledgement and the thought process that maybe it's inaccurate? What do you say to that?
Well, there are two things to that story and to that situation. First of all, Quebec has been always very reluctant to any kind of land acknowledgement, and I state this for a fact because I've heard it, and Quebec's always removes itself from any kind of movement towards that end, despite the fact that municipalities don't seem to shy away from making that move. In terms of the debate between historians, non-Indigenous historians, by the way, is going to continue. Definitely, we've seen that on other issues as well. And to me, it's really a debate that belongs to our people because it's about relationships between communities and nations, and that's where it needs to happen. In terms of the land acknowledgement itself, I think, if you search long enough, you'll see that this government and previous governments have always stayed away from any kind of indication to proceed in that fashion. And Quebec, again, in this case, is somewhat isolating itself as a province.
Ghislain Picard is Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, Quebec-Labrador. Chief Picard, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.